And he also makes vintage shots from the mid-range like some sort of diet Michael Jordan. But he's also controversial because people think he's a foul merchant or a rule opportunist or even the dreaded G word. Now, in the next 15 minutes, I'm not going to change your feelings on foul drawing or the SGA experience, but I am going to show you precisely how he draws fouls and creates contact, why he's nearly impossible to guard regardless of the whistle, and what exactly makes him the best wing player the league has seen since Kobe Bryant. Shai is the latest in a recent string of players to come out of nowhere and blow through our wildest expectations. James Harden did it by creating space behind him. Steph Curry did it by just shooting from anywhere all the time. And Nikola Jokic did it by taking Bill Walton's passing and blending it with Zach Randolph's postgame and then just turning into Dirk Nowitzki as a shooter. You know, normal everyday stuff. Essentially, these players forged new archetypes on the court, and Shai is flirting with that territory. He's a master of the mid-range in a way that's kind of Jordan-esque, fadeaway over either shoulder, hovering jumpers when he gets to a spot, and just endless slipperiness to make his way to the basket against all kinds of defense. But unlike Kobe, McGrady, and the disciples of that old school, SGA does this without being the fastest or jumping the highest. He's all about changing pace, stopping and starting at unexpected times, just reacting to a defender's position regardless of where that defender goes. A recent Athletic article by Fred Katz explored how deliberate and systematic his training and style have been. According to his childhood trainer, Dwayne Washington, Shai should think of himself as a car. Go from third gear to first gear, then from first gear to third gear, then ease down to second and maybe first before ratcheting back up again. Basically, don't worry about top speed, worry about changing speeds and changing directions. Traditionally, great penetrators move in straight lines to the basket, or they look for space to attack in a slightly curved path to the rim. Michael Jordan's the king of driving into traffic, and he did a ton of work with the jab step out of the triple threat position, and even his roundabout drives were often minor readjustments on a beeline to the hoop. But instead of driving in straight lines, Shai zigzags at these oblique angles to find his way to the rim. You'll often see him laterally move in one direction, feel an overplay, then come back in the other until he finds a gap to burst through and then work his magic. Here's one where he starts right, then stops. Then when he goes right again, the defender beats him, so he stops on a dime to get left, then explodes past the defender with a little English. And this is straight from the Manu Ginobili school of zigzag driving. On this one, Shai's basically moving toward the left corner, then back to the right corner, crosses middle, then gets cut off just to start and stop for the fourth time. Here's one down the stretch where he's contained going right, then when he's cut off going left, spins back for a slick fadeaway. So all these changes of pace and direction for elite penetrators, and combined with some officiating changes, we've seen incredible two-point shooting numbers from self-generated scorers. Among players who self-create over 70% of their twos, Shai posted the third best percentage on record last year, then eclipsed it this season, trailing only De'Aaron Fox and Luka Doncic from 2023. As you might imagine, SGA's style leads to a lot of free throw attempts. He's second in the league in attempts per possession, trailing only Giannis, and Antetokounmpo actually owns the single-season record set back in 2023. And the all-time leaders here are him, Joel Embiid, and two players who were deliberately fouled all the time. Jordan has one season in the top 25, peak Dwayne Wade has one in the top 50, and Shai is currently right behind the Flash. That doesn't seem too out of line given how hard he is to stay in front of, although with a free throw or two less per game, he'd drop out of the top 100. So is he actually getting some sort of unfair boost?
You know, they really do. They foul all the time. And then, you know, you can't really touch Shai.
A play like this is 100% foul hunting. Shea unnaturally veers back toward the defender for contact, and this is arguably illegal as offensive players aren't allowed to veer back toward defenders like this anymore, thankfully. But we poured through most of Shea's fouls this season, and there weren't many blatant examples like this. He feels the slightest contact here and immediately flails for the call. And this is probably the most controversial, debatable element of his foul drawing game. On one play, he's plowing into contact with all of his tensile strength, and on the next, he feels the slightest contact on a drive and turns into a yelling limp doodle.
He's the same. He gets downhill, attacks those angles, and when he gets into that, point of contact with his body, all it takes is just that off arm, like kind of like little chicken wing, gets you off balance. Or if you want to counter it and try to be physical and hold your ground, then it looks like you just launch him into the third row and he's going down. So it's one of those things where he has those things. He has the angles, he has a change of direction and the physicality.
Toumani Camara stays with him nicely here, and Shea just powers through to create space for his step back. And you can see the little chicken wing Cam Johnson was referring to, and maybe that should be an offensive foul. They've allowed way more contact this year without calling many fouls unless the defender falls over. But Shea's also a master at feeling the contact, picking it up, and going soft to emphasize that he was hit. I mean, Gilgeous-Alexander does blow right by the defender here, who then leans and holds him a little with his right arm to slow him up, but I'm pretty sure Shea could also just power through this if he really wanted to. A lot of the contact that he's feeling on the outside comes from defenders reaching with their arms because they can't stay in front of him. And this one was called a shooting foul, which makes zero sense because he gathers to shoot after the contact. And most of these fouls on the outside happen after a defender's in trouble, then reaches or hand checks to slow him down. Then when Shea feels contact, he immediately launches it to the rim for free throws, where at least it's correctly called on the floor a decent amount of the time. Again, this foul is caused by his insane change of pace. He lulls the defender to sleep, and this would be a clean blow-by without the contact. This is actually really hard to see in real time. We originally tagged this play as a flop. The Hornets broadcaster probably thought it was a flop.
Classic.
But when you get a better angle, you can see Seth Curry hook and hold Shea once he's beat. So defenders are actually trying to get away with a ton of illegal arm contact to prevent total breakdowns because they can't stop Gilgeous-Alexander's unique A to C stop and start patterns. SGA will also use the hook himself to accentuate the contact. That could be a hand-checking foul on Ty Jerome with that hard jab to keep Shea in front of him, but notice Gilgeous-Alexander instantly try to hook it to create contact as he starts a very unnatural shooting motion, and unfortunately that one was called in the act of shooting. This one against Minnesota was on the floor, although I'm not sure it was even a foul, so he certainly accentuates calls and even dips his toe into the unethical pool at times, like going with the hook here to draw the whistle. But we also found a ton of murky calls that exist in some gray area. Is that a foul on Davion Mitchell, or does Shea go looking for free throws here? It's almost impossible to notice, but SGA gathers after his shoulder is held. Otherwise, this zigzagging set of moves probably slithers cleanly past the defense. And sure enough, when the defender's outside hand is up, Shea ethically flows into silky finishes.
Liberty Mutual is all she talks about since we
to slow Shea down, who then immediately goes flying. Of course, that's different than SGA veering into a defender who's holding his line, which is what this looks like here, and should probably just be a no call. And some of these might even be offensive fouls if there's a large lean or veer into the defense. The psychological toll defending him is also fascinating. Zion practically clotheslines him here, reaching, but he's furious that Shea's trail arm is trying to prevent Williamson from hand-checking him, which is actually a pretty natural battle for top stars today. Defenders are allowed way more contact on the perimeter compared to 2 seasons ago, and the best players constantly grapple for position with their arms on their drives, and sometimes that means getting away with push-offs that probably should be offensive fouls. Among Second Spectrum's top 50 players in drives to the basket, Shea ranks 14th in offensive foul frequency, slightly behind speed demons like De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Maxey. So maybe he's due for a few push-off calls, but that's outside the scope of overt foul hunting. Actually, when we started this video, I thought we had way more examples of Shea being gifted free throws, but most of what seems to be sparking this controversy is his willingness to instantly accentuate actual fouls, and these are fouls because no one can stay in front of his incredibly unique style of penetration. We put Anthony Edwards under a similar microscope for a few games, and he just powered through the hand checks so they never impacted his rhythm or balance. And this is the impossible gray area of officiating, where the same contact to stronger players becomes, by definition, incidental contact. But the other thing that jumped out was that he has that traditional straight line style attacking the basket, with his first step just leaving defenders in the dust. And I keep coming back to these zigzags that SGA draws on the court compared to the classic straight line drive. He's the kind of player the sideline camera doesn't do justice to precisely because he moves at abnormal angles, and I'm blown away by his reflexes. He reacts instantly when he's touched, but also instantly reads a defender's adjustment. This is probably part of how he's able to break so quickly and then get to that mid-range. And that's the final element that makes him so different to guard. Defenders crowd him or take tight angles because they're petrified he'll pull up for a mid-range jumper. In an era dominated by threes and layups, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has broken defenses by playing the mid-range and the drive off each other, which is actually kind of Jordan-esque. Did you catch that, by the way? He faked picking up his dribble on the inside-out move, or perhaps crazier, went to pick it up on that little fumble and then changed his mind mid-move, which is absolutely mind-bending. By the way, fans used to complain about Jordan's special whistle or that he traveled all the time. Tommy Heinsohn once lost his mind after a series of Jordan foul calls, proclaiming something like, "That is baloney, Jordan is not God." So superstar whistles are nothing new, and I think there's a lot of that going on here with Shai. If he never accentuated contact and played through it, would he then have a subpar whistle? I'm not sure. But I did miss a ton of these legitimate fouls in real time before reviewing them, which is a different thing than flopping or an unnatural basketball play seeking contact. Of course, he does do that sometimes, and most fans don't want that in the game. But a ton of this controversy is probably from just how hard he is to guard because of his style. The man's having one of the great wing seasons ever and has scored 20 points in 62 straight games, and he still might have that streak with a less friendly whistle. So, how much of this comes down to unethical foul drawing? I'll let you decide. But what I think we can all agree on